Without further ado, I want to introduce to some and present to others, Israel Wayne. Can you hear me, sir?
I can hear you. Yes, we're good to go.
Yay!
This
We
is
can
amazing.
we could hear you the whole entire time. We have introduced you. Everyone's excited to hear from you. What we're doing is we're streaming live today on our Facebook for a limited opportunity for them to see you. And then we're going to have a mixed version of it that's going to launch on our YouTube page. And I want to give you liberty, sir. I'm going to actually come off screen while you're on screen for you to be able to take over and talk. And let me just set this up. I did talk about it, but Israel Wayne is going to, who is the director and the author of Family Renewal. He's going to talk about the power of affirmations. And Israel, one of the main reasons why we asked you to come on is one, because you're amazing and awesome, and we appreciate your work in the homeschool community. But on your Family Renewal website, which I want you to tell them about, I love the 3 keys that you say about prioritizing your home. Our theme today is back to home, all uppercase, HOME, homeschool. And so we're real excited about how you do that. And then, of course, you're going to be talking about ways to try to inspire and motivate your children. And as the father of 11, truly, the Lord has called you for such a time as this. And so thank you for being here, sir.
Well, thank you. Hey, quick question. I'm trying to do a screen share here so I can do the PowerPoint. Do you have an ability? Do you see anything that's sharing at the moment, or is it not?
Yeah, I saw it when it popped up. But if you hit the present and or invite, that will allow you to screen share.
Okay.
So I'll stay here until you push that button. So go ahead and hit present and or invite.
And then it have?
And then it'll take you to wherever your screen share is. So for me, I practiced it before you came on. It allowed me to go in, and then it gave me Chrome, and then it said a file. So it depends. You probably have a file on your computer. Can you see a button that says present or invite?
I see this now. I don't see myself anymore.
Right.
So I'm disappeared, but hopefully that'll be okay. So you want me to just run with this as a presentation and back out?
I'm going to come off screen. Yes. And let's see if you present. I'll come back if I don't see your screen share. It might be because I'm here. So let me disappear and allow you to take it away. So I present to some and introduce to others, Israel Wayne.
Okay. All right. Well, so in this presentation, hopefully you're seeing my PowerPoint. If you're not, Lannister, come back on and let me know if you're not seeing the PowerPoint. But I want to talk about the topic of the power of affirmation to motivate your children. And this is a very important topic that us as parents need to think about, because when we are wanting to teach our children, it's really important that we have their heart and that we are able to communicate to them in a way that they're willing to receive. So one of the things that I've learned about homeschooling is that homeschooling is really far less about schooling than it is about relationships, and it's about family, and it's about parenting. So I often say that I define homeschooling as parenting with academics. You know, we start teaching our children from the time they're born, and slowly we introduce academics, and we begin to do this over time. And so the question that I have is, for many of us, the way that we are seeking to motivate our children is often with a critical attitude, a critical spirit. And we sometimes do that because that's the way that we were raised. It's the way that we were parented. And so it's what we're familiar with. It's what we're comfortable with. And so sadly, we end up, parenting in the way that we were parented. And so when we're trying to motivate our children, there are like 2 different types of motivation. There's what's called intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is when somebody is motivated within themselves that they are doing the right things for the right reasons because they want to. And so that's really our goal with parenting, is we want our children to have that intrinsic motivation. Hang on just a second. But then, for our younger ones, a lot of times we find that they don't have that motivation. And so we end up motivating them extrinsically. That means outside of themselves. And the way that looks practically oftentimes is it's like we're policing our children. We're having to follow them around, find out why they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, try to get them back on task. And that's really less desirable. Our goal is that we want to try to get that motivation on the inside of them rather than working as an external force, making them do what they don't want to do, if that makes sense. And so what I've learned as a father of 11 is that the thing that really makes the difference is when they have a heart change on the inside. And we as parents are not capable of making that heart change happen. We really can't be responsible for making sure that they have the right motives and the right desires. Personally, I believe that's a work of God. It's something that God does on the inside of them that we can't control. Like if we could all just fix that in our children, I think we would. But because we can't, we are limited to what we can do. So our goal is that that they are transformed inside of themselves, in their hearts, by the work of God, and that they're changed and become a new person on the inside. That's our goal. That's our hope and prayer for our children. But while we're waiting on that, what we sometimes have to do is we have to work on this extrinsic motivation, the external motivation. And so there's two different types of extrinsic motivation. There's positive extrinsic motivation and negative extrinsic motivation. And both of these are useful, and both of them are necessary in the parenting process. So for example, when you look in the Bible, God motivated his people oftentimes with both positive and negative extrinsic motivation. Like you read through Deuteronomy, and God says, I lay before you this day blessing and cursing, life and death, choose life. And so he's saying, like, there's reward, there's blessing if you're doing things the right way, but there's also negative consequences when you don't. And so these positive and negative consequences are things that are both necessary in the parenting process. The problem is if we happen to hang out too much in the negative, and we're focused on catching our children doing the wrong thing and correcting them all the time, over time, that can lead to us losing their heart. So I want to read to you some quotes that I think will be helpful. There's a book by a father-son team, Henry and Richard Blackaby, and they wrote a book called Spiritual Leadership, Moving People Onto God's Agenda. And so this was written for a lot of church leaders, but I found some of the principles were really applicable to any relationship where you're in leadership, and certainly parenting is a leadership dynamic as well. And so they say this: cynical leaders cultivate cynical followers. When leaders are constantly criticizing others, they're modeling a critical spirit for their people. When leaders have no faith in their people, they prevent them from reaching their potential. It is imperative that leaders not allow themselves to be consumed by a cynical spirit. True leaders focus on that which is right and on what gives hope, not on what is wrong. Unfortunately, leaders who have been criticized in the past or who have failed in earlier attempts to lead can be skeptical about future success. When leaders sense they are developing a cynical attitude, they must correct it immediately before it poisons their effectiveness and possibly their health. Without question, a critical spirit in spiritual leaders reveals that their hearts have shifted from God. Only a conscious decision to return to God will save the leader from becoming ineffective. A cynical spirit reflects a lack of belief in God and his ability to do what he says he will do. So in other words, when we lose faith in God and that God is in control of the situation and that God is at work in our situation, our family dynamic, we can start to panic. And then we start to behave badly because we feel like this is all on us and that we as parents are responsible for everything that happens. And so we have to learn how to rely on God in this process. He also says it's crucial that leaders guard their attitudes. Christian leaders have every reason in the world to be positive and optimistic for the future. They serve the King of Kings. I'm not a big fan of Bible paraphrases, but there's a paraphrase of Matthew 7:1-2 that I like for the context and purpose of this message because it encapsulates what I'm trying to say. It says this: don't pick on people, jump on their failures, or criticize their faults, unless, of course, you want the same treatment. That critical spirit has a way of boomeranging. Business tycoon Charles Schwab said this: I have yet to find the man, however exalted his station, who did not do better work and put forth greater effort under a spirit of approval than under a spirit of criticism. And leadership expert John Maxwell, in his book, Be a People Person, wrote this: appreciate people for who they are. This truth is dramatically played out in the lives of children. They have a way of mirroring what they hear about themselves. Recently, I watched a talk show which was devoted to the subject of teenage suicide. More and more teenagers are attempting suicide as an escape from the demands of life. They feel they can never measure up to the standards of performance expected by parents and others. They feel appreciated only when they have done well and not because they're unique and priceless individuals. As a result, many kids see life as a no-win situation. They feel they can never, hang on, hanging up here just a little bit. So when children, basically the way I look at it is children have this bar, let me go back to that. Children have a bar of acceptance that they try to reach for with their parents. And some parents make that bar of acceptance be academic performance or a certain level of behavior or achieving goals or something like that. And what we need to do is we need to learn how to affirm our children, not so much based on performance and what they do, but to value them and affirm them for who they are, and that they have intrinsic worth, and that we love them simply because they're our children. And so I think of how God set that example for us. And Jesus at his baptism in Matthew chapter 3, verse 17, there's this public event, and the Father, God the Father, speaks from heaven, and he says this about Jesus publicly. He says, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." And the two things that God says about his son in that passage, I think, are the two things that our children need to hear from us. Number one, we love them. And then second, that we're well pleased with them. Our children need to know and hear verbally from us that we love them. But I think they also need to know and hear verbally and feel emotionally connected to the idea that we actually like them and that we're pleased with them. And this gives them a great sense of security. I think it was Dr. James Dobson who once said that a child's self-worth is determined by what the most important person in their life thinks of them. And that first relationship that is most important to them is that relationship with their parents. And so when their parents are approving of them and accepting of them, they feel confident and they feel assured and they are self-secure. But when they don't have that security in that relationship, they go find it somewhere else, because we all want to be loved and accepted. And so when they don't find that acceptance in the parental relationship, they go look for it in other relationships. Sometimes those are negative. It could be a boyfriend or a girlfriend. In worst case scenarios, it could be a street gang. It could be a cult. It could be any number of things. But where somebody's actually accepting and approving for these young people for who they are. Again, John Maxwell in his book, Be All You Can Be, says this: the most important time to affirm people and be a cheerleader is when they are moving out and stretching. Too many people affirm too late. Remember that even a tombstone will say good things about a fellow after he's dead. Don't be a tombstone encourager. Affirm early, affirm often. Don't wait for the race to be won, but encourage each step forward. Affirm immediately. The effect of an encouraging word loses its strength as time lapses. Affirm personally, and don't be afraid to affirm in front of others. Nothing is more encouraging than to receive honest praise in front of your peers. So these are some questions that I asked myself one day. I was just thinking about my own relationship with my children. And so in my journal, I just wrote these things down. I asked, do your children know that you are well pleased with them? Are you someone who has a pleasant disposition and a ready smile? Are you enjoyable to be around? And I thought about the contrast of Proverbs 25:24, where it says that it's better to live in the corner of the roof than in a house shared with a contentious woman. And I wonder with some of our children if they have that attitude about us as parents, that it's better for them to just get out of our house and to be away from us than to spend time with us because we're just so contentious and negative. I know of many young people who, if you gave them the choice, they would always rather be with their friends. They'd always rather be out of the home, doing something away from their parents than doing something with them. And to me, that's an indication, kind of like a check mark, that we can ask ourselves, if given the opportunity, would our children rather be with us, doing something with us as parents, or would they rather be away from us doing something with their friends? And if the answer to that is they would always choose to be away from us doing something with their friends, we've lost their heart, at least to a great extent. And they've already given their allegiance to someone else. And so in terms of influence, in order for you to influence another person, you have to have their heart and their respect. And when you lose that, then they transfer that respect over to somebody else. And then that other person becomes the most influential person in their life. And so I want to be careful to, not give an imbalance in that when I'm talking about affirmation and parenting, I'm not saying we only ever say positive things to our children and we never say anything negative, because clearly there are times where we have to correct them. There are times where we have to discipline our children, but we need to speak to the behavior and address and discipline the behavior as opposed to tearing down the person. And I would say even beyond that, my goal is not merely to discipline the behavior. I want to try to get to the heart behind the behavior, to the why behind the what. I want to try to ask my child, why did you do what you did? And try to speak to their heart rather than just parenting the peripheries or parenting the disobedience. I want to actually try to speak to their actual heart. And I always want my child to know that I'm for them, that I'm on their side, that I'm not against them. And so when we attack our child with our words, with our actions, they put up walls of defense and it shuts them down. And when you've lost a relationship with your child, it's almost impossible to teach them. So a lot of times people come to me and they say, I don't know if I can homeschool my children. And I'll ask them, do you have a good relationship with your children? And they'll say, yes. And I'll say, then you can homeschool. Like all the logistical things, math and curriculum and all of that, you can figure that out. There are programs, there are curriculum programs, there are tutors. There's ways you can figure out the academic part. That's not the hard part of homeschooling. The hard part of homeschooling is the parenting part. And if you don't have a relationship with your child, then you have to kind of take off the teacher hat and you have to put on the parenting hat. And you say, okay, we have to figure out this relational dynamic, because right now you don't like me, you don't respect me, you don't want to be around me. And so then we have to start asking ourselves as parents, how much of that is on us? How much of that is have we cultivated that through the way that we interact with our children? And oftentimes the way that we communicate with them is through anger and frustration. James chapter 1, verse 19 through 20 tells us we're supposed to be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to get angry, because the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. And so these are more questions that I wrote down for myself, but you might find them to be helpful for you as well. Asked, do you tend to focus on the failure of your children? Do you look at your own life and faults through a telescope, but it's your child's with a microscope? Do you have low expectations of your children? Do you expect your children to fail? Does fault finding come easier to you than praise? Do you speak down to your children in a condescending manner? Do you have a demanding spirit? Do you feel a need to point out every time your child does something imperfectly? Do you find yourself more frequently looking for reasons to correct your children than catch them in the act of doing something commendable? And so I think there's different reasons why parents sometimes are frustrated and why they respond with a negative attitude. Some of it is overload, that we simply have too much going on in our life. We don't have enough margin. We haven't created enough white space or downtime. And so people often say, well, I'm scared if I homeschool my children that they'll miss out on opportunities or activities. And what I find with most homeschoolers is they're actually way overcommitted. The problem is on the other side. They're way over socialized. They have way too many activities. You can't do all the things and keep a balance and have good relationships. You can do some of the things. And so the goal then as a parent is to try to prioritize what are the best things, what are the most important things, what are the most necessary things, do those things and try to cut out the things that really aren't as important or as beneficial for your whole family. You have to take not just the child's interests into mind, but the well-being of the entire family. And so repeating the cycle, we tend to parent in the way that we were parented. And if you had parents who were negative in their approach, you tend to do that as well. And then I just turned 50 this year. And so what I find is that getting older doesn't necessarily solve or help the irritation, frustration, and annoyance problem. It actually tends to make it more difficult if you aren't intentional. If you just go with your default, I don't know if you ever notice this, but older people sometimes can just be grumpy and irascible. And Henry and Richard Blackaby explain it this way. They say older people seem particularly susceptible to cynicism. Their youthful enthusiasm has worn off, and what they consider realism born of experience may in essence be nothing more than a cynical attitude that has festered over time. And so some other sources of a critical attitude, I think, are feeling alone. I think moms feel this a lot of times, particularly that the responsibility of raising the children, disciplining the children, teaching the children, taking care of the housework, doing the meal prep, all of this has fallen on their shoulders, particularly when dad's not that involved, he's not helping. And so having a direct conversation for you as wives with your husband, I know you may say, I've tried that. Well, you can't make a man do something he doesn't want to do. But I have found that men also are not mind readers. And so you may say, well, he should know what I need, or he should understand what I need. Well, men don't. Like, I hate to put it that way. They're just kind of dense. They're just not real bright. And so you have to tell men specifically, I would really appreciate it if you could help me with this specifically. Like, if you could help me teach math to our 9-year-old, that would really help me. And oftentimes men are willing to do that as soon as they know exactly what it is that they can do to help. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't, depends on the guy. But feeling alone is a source of critical attitude, impatience, sometimes with expectations that we have on our children. And so I think we need to make sure that our expectations are reasonable, that we're not expecting them to be beyond their age's maturity level, or expecting them to be like all of their peers, or even to be on grade level. Honestly, there are children who are going to be beyond grade level. There are going to be children who are below grade level. And there are children who, depending on the subject, they'll be 3 grades ahead in some subjects and 3 grades behind in some subjects, right? This is one of the things that homeschooling helps to address, is this uniqueness of every child. But the standard for each child needs to be, are they giving 100% of their best? Are they doing the best that they personally can do? And that's the standard for us with our children, is, are they doing the best they can? And if each child is individually doing the best that they can, that's what we expect from them. We don't expect them to perform at the level of their sibling, or, even the state standards or whatever. And I'm not saying don't care about state standards, but I'm just saying the standard for them needs to be giving 100% effort. And then pride, of course, like, we all want our children to look good. We want them to make us look good. And so we often have these, again, high expectations. And when our children don't meet those expectations, we get frustrated. We respond badly to them because they're making us look bad. Spiritual depletion is one where, you're trying to serve other people, but you're not taking care of yourself. You're not spending time alone with God each day. You're not spending time in the Bible and prayer. You're not refueling your own heart and soul. That's essential if you want to be able to give to other people. So we strongly encourage you, make sure that you're spending time for yourself to refuel your own soul every day before you try to go out and serve other people. Just a few other things, when I'm talking about affirming our children, we want to be careful that we don't give in to flattery, which is false praise. We don't want to be telling our child that they're gifted or skilled in something that they're not. I have some children who can't sing, for example, and I don't want them to embarrass themselves by thinking that they're a great singer and going up on a big stage in public and embarrassing themselves by singing off key, right? So we have to be honest with them about their abilities and tell them, hey, you're really good at this, you're really not so great at that, and that's okay. Like, we don't all have to be gifted at everything. You're really good at this thing over here, let's focus on that. And then I've heard this said that children can handle a 10-to-1 ratio. They can handle 10 words of positive praise and affirmation and 1 word of correction, but they can't handle the inverse. So if your method and your mode of parenting is that you tend to have 10 words of correction to 1 word of affirmation, that's not going to work. You'll lose their heart if that's your ratio. So when we find that we are critically motivated and we're teaching them with a negative attitude, then repentance is important, that we need to tell them, hey, I was wrong. I spoke to you inappropriately today. I shouldn't have used that tone of voice. I didn't need to, I overreacted. And sometimes we feel like we'll lose their respect if we do that, but the opposite's true. They actually respect us more when we take responsibility for our own efforts. So what we want to do is learn how to be encouragers, which are people who inspire courage in other people, rather than discouragers, who are people who take away courage in others and inspire defeat. So I hope that these have been helpful for you. We have written a book, my wife and I have, called Pitching a Fit, Overcoming Angry and Stressed Out Parenting. And we have a whole section on there on the power of affirmation and how to motivate your children with positive words of encouragement. So we would encourage you to check that out. Our website is familyrenewal.org. And you can get all of our resources, including my other books. I have a big picture parenting book called Raising Them Up, Parenting for Christians, which is really how to disciple your children from age 2 to 20. And it's a very comprehensive book on how to parent your children from a biblical philosophy. And then this book, Answers for Homeschooling. If you're a newbie, if you're just looking into it, Mike Smith, who is a former president of HSLDA, Homeschool Legal Defense Association, he said this book is the Walmart and Costco of homeschool information. He said, I wish this book had been written 40 years ago, because it basically provides everything you need to know about homeschooling in one book. And so my goal was to try to basically be as comprehensive as we could possibly be. How do you choose a curriculum? Am I qualified for this? What if I'm not patient enough? How can we afford to homeschool, particularly on a single income? What about sports? What about high school? What about, shouldn't we be sending our children to the public schools to be missionaries and evangelists? That's one that Christians use a lot. Or what about socialization? Or just every argument that you've ever heard used against homeschooling. There's a lot of research. There's a lot of statistics. And so we cover that in this book. One of my best known books is a book called Education, Does God Have an Opinion?, which is a biblical philosophy of education and how to teach from a biblical worldview. I have some Bible studies, Questions God Asks, which is 19 questions God asked people in the Old Testament. And then Questions Jesus Asked, 20 questions Jesus asked people in the New Testament. So these are topical Bible studies from the Old Testament and the New Testament. We sell these all on our website, familyrenewal.org. I also have a high school Bible doctrine curriculum called Foundations in Faith. It's a 36-week, 180-lesson introduction to systematic theology for teenagers. And then a family catechism, which simply means question and answer format, that answers the 52 most important Bible doctrine questions as much as possible directly from Scripture. So this is a great resource for family Bible study called Foundational Truths. And all these resources and much more are all on our website, familyrenewal.org. I'm also on all the social media platforms. And so if you're on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or wherever, X, wherever, just look up Israel Wayne or Family Renewal. And we would also love to connect with you there. We have a new podcast that's just launched 2 weeks ago that's called Raising Them Up. And you can subscribe to that anywhere you listen to podcasts. And then we have a different podcast called Family Renewal that's on YouTube. So check those out. I'm going to stop sharing here and go back to our main screen if I can. Let's see. Oopsie. How do I do this? Let's see. Can I turn that off? How do I get out of there? I think I'm still sharing my screen. Let me go back. There we go. Hi, Larissa.
You are doing a phenomenal job. You're not still sharing your screen. You are
okay.
Awesome, sir.
Oh, okay, good. Well, we finally made it. And I apologize. I don't know what that was. I've never had that because I actually use this platform, StreamYard, for our podcast, our new podcast, and log in with my laptop all the time. And you know how technology is today? It did not want to use my laptop. So I had to grab my wife's, and eventually we got here. So my apologies to everybody, but thanks for your patience.
Oh, you were so amazing. I know you guys want to affirm Israel Wayne. Go ahead and put something in the chat. Just was so life-changing for me. Would you believe that this is our Bible study for me and my teens this homeschool year, and it just came in the mail. I love Henry Blackaby, and of course I love John Maxwell. So Oh my gosh, so awesome. Everybody's like, hey, where can I get this? And so we're going to be adding you to our YouTube channel. We're so very excited. Thank you so much. And Israel Wayne is going to spend just a few minutes in our VIP section. So some people pay just a little bit to be in a VIP section, and you're going to be in a Zoom link. So if you are a part of that VIP group, you get a chance to be with Israel Wayne for just about 10 minutes or so. But he was simply amazing. Someone said, simply amazing information. I needed this. Yeah, it is so definitely one of those. We needed this kind of
Oh, thank you, Linus.
information.
Blessed to
Thank
be
you.
part of this, and grateful that you're offering this as a service for the homeschoolers in Maryland. As Linus said, I grew up in Maryland, was homeschooled in Maryland, and so it's near and dear to my heart. My family started homeschooling there in 1978. And so I homeschooled through high school. I graduated a little bit early, but my older sister, I should say, my older sister was 5. I was 3 when my mom started homeschooling. So I graduated from homeschooling in 1991, and it was back in the old days when there weren't many people doing it. But
Yes.
it's a blessing that your organization's there. So I'm going to jump off of here, right, and then I go over
Yes.
to Zoom link
Yes.
and to chat with some people in the VIP area.
Yes.
All
And so
right.
we want to thank you for watching, and we're just going to take a quick pause.